Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. Hope you guys are doing well on this beautiful Monday morning after a weekend of sports where we saw some really good Canadian content, including Mike Weir winning his first golf event in over 13 years. If we all remember him putting on the gold jacket, gold jacket, green jacket, who gives a shit, at Augusta National um, in 2004, which is really a historic Canadian moment. But great for him. Also, the QMJHL season ended for the St. John Sea Dogs and Moncton Wildcats last night. I caught that game. It was good to see. I hadn't been to one all year. The last game I had attended, the Q, was when Alexi Lafreniere was playing in Moncton, and that was March of 2020. So that was a packed house. You could barely move in there. Last night, it's much different. You got to wear a mask and you can't hardly move, there's hardly any people. So it was good to be in a rink and watch a game, but also it really it shows you firsthand what this, global pandemic's been like, where you don't get, the whole fan experience. You got to wear a mask the whole time. If you pull it down for half a second, you have a woman coming up to you, reading you the riot act. Not that happened to me last night 3 times. But so it was interesting for sure. And just when it comes to being in that experience and wearing a mask and what have you, I want to give credit to Major League Baseball. I'm going to talk about some baseball stories over the weekend. But what I read over the weekend is that the Tigers and Yankees played against each other this weekend. Yankees swept the Tigers, but that's not the big story to me. The big story was that the Yankees and Tigers did not have to wear a mask in the dugout. They didn't have to wear them to their hotels. And the reason for that is because 85% of both teams are vaccinated. And obviously that's different up here when it comes to Canadian teams. Obviously our vaccines are not, we can't get them like the US has. But number one, I give credit to the athletes for getting vaccinated. That's a personal decision, but it's encouraged if you want to travel, what have you, it's best to do it. So I kudos to them for getting vaccinated, but also kudos to Major League Baseball for saying, okay, if you get vaccinated, you do not have to go through all these different policies and, red tape, so to speak, that the other teams that haven't been vaccinated are. Because if you get vaccinated, you should get some good treatment, in my opinion. I think if you get vaccinated, again, this is maybe a political thing, but I just think when you travel, if you're fully vaccinated and where you're going and people are vaccinated there, the 14-day quarantine should not be implemented anymore. Again, these people are traveling city to city playing sports. You should not have to wear a mask. You should be able to go out to eat because guess what? You've done what you're supposed to do. If you get vaccinated, you do not get any advantage. If you still have to wear a mask, if you still have to look over your shoulder when you want to take a crap, it doesn't really benefit you at all, does it? In my mind, I like that baseball, and I've had conversations with my mother about this because, she's a former nurse and she's a worrywart and, she cares more than I care about 99.9% of things. And, she even agreed with me on this. So I just credit to baseball in this sense and the Yankees and Tigers for doing the correct thing, getting vaccinated, but then also baseball giving a reward to their athletes for doing the right thing. When you do excellent work, you win a Nobel Prize or you win a Nobel Peace Prize or you win an Oscar, what have you. You get benefit, you win a World Series. In this case, do good for the rest of humanity. And when you're in your environment, you do not have to, have the C3PO force field up on you after doing the correct thing. It's just, it makes perfect sense to me. Cool experience to get back in a rink. Again, didn't love the whole getting woman come up to me 3 times, telling me to put my mask on when I did have it on. It wasn't over my nose, I'll admit that. But nevertheless, fun experience, and I just thought I'd give you a little inside view on my life when it comes to going to the rink. And of course, if you know me, I like to cause a stir every now and then. And first time back, I thought, why not get a few people pissed off at me? So Sea Dogs won the game 6-5. I left the game before overtime because it was a meaningless game. And I wasn't sitting for another 15 minutes, let them flood, and then watching overtime. So you need to get some sleep. Dog was in the kennel. So, what can you do? I mentioned Mike Weir off the top, and Mike Weir winning the green jacket in 2004. It was a huge Canadian moment. Obviously, we have Canadian athletes that have won Stanley Cups. Of course, you think of Sidney Crosby just recently when it comes to brand name Canadian athletes, and hockey's different because you get Canadians that win a Stanley Cup every year. I think of Ryan O'Reilly when he won it with the St. Louis Blues. Huge. Alex Pietrangelo. So you can't, team sports is different. Baseball, it's slightly because there's less Canadian athletes. When you think of Joey Votto, he's never won a World Series, but he's got 300 home runs this weekend. That's a big achievement. He's won 2 Lou Marsh Awards, which is Canadian Athlete of the Year. Bianca Andreescu winning the U.S. Open in tennis. Those are significant moments. Brooke Henderson winning her 9th LPGA Tour event 2 weeks ago. But Mike Weir, when it comes to individual sports, individual people, Mike Weir was really a trailblazer. We have the Olympics, you have those sports, but Mike Weir going into golf and winning Augusta National, I mean, it doesn't get any bigger than that. Period. You think of the world's the Super Bowl, huge event. The World Series, but the Stanley Cup final is so minuscule when it comes to the Masters. If you're looking at just notoriety, the top 4 golf majors are more important than the Stanley Cup final when it comes to viewership and when it comes to just general interest. And that's not me. I love hockey more than anybody. That's not conjecture. That's just fact. And he won Augusta National. A Canadian is only a second time there, wins it. Huge. And he went on to have an okay career. He won another major. He was in the hunt a lot. A couple times he kind of threw away majors, but he's a Canadian icon forever and ever. Mike Weir doesn't have to buy a beer in Canada, in my opinion. When he also won the Canadian Open, which is a huge accomplishment as well. But it's been a while for him. He made the cut at Augusta a year and a half ago. That was a big deal because he's 50 years old to make the cut. That's impressive. But he's been playing on the Champions Tour, and he's finished twice in the past year. So he's gotten close. And this weekend they're playing, and they cut the event to 36 holes just because of weather, and they didn't know if they're going to be able to finish it. So he's in second place heading into yesterday, but he grinds out, shoots a 68, 4 under for the day. And who's battling with him at the top is John Daly. And of course, John Daly really, when it comes to driving, length, just hitting the ball as far as you can, John Daly, Tiger Woods, these guys were, trailblazers for that. So, and John Daly's known for, his drinking, smoking darts, and just, being a grit grinder out on the golf course. But, Mike Weir, they're tied on 18, and John Daly puts it in the drink. And, to his credit, Weir pars out. He finishes a stroke ahead of John Daly, and John Daly's had to settle for runner-up. But Mike Weir's first win in over 13 years. Whether it's the Champions Tour, which is, the Senior Tour, or the PGA, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a huge deal for him to get a win. In 13 years, that is a long time between victories. And, kudos to him for getting to the Senior Tour, to playing some good golf. He's still playing consistently. I think he's been a huge mentor to guys like Corey Connors, who's, in the top 30 in the FedEx Cup rankings, Mac Hughes, who continues to get better. There's some really good young Canadian golfers who look up to Mike Weir, who aspire to be him. And, they play together at Augusta National a couple days before. They go, the three of them play together, play a practice round together, and just hear stories from Mike Weir and get advice. So I think he's been a great ambassador for Canadian sports, Canadian athletes. He's a class act. He's, he won mentioned he won Augusta National, and you just never hear a bad word about Mike Weir. So it's never a bad thing to hear, Mike Weir wins an event. And it's just a great story. So credit to Mike Weir. Congratulations. And 13 years and not give up, just keep fighting, keep, chipping away. He deserves a lot of credit for winning that. In the PGA, they're playing at the Valspar Championship down in Florida. And there were some big names in the field. Justin Thomas, DJ was there. But it really wasn't about them. We saw the top three finishers were Sam Burns, Keegan Bradley, and Max Homa. Max Homa's been one of the more consistent golfers on the PGA Tour this year, finishing in the top three for the fifth time. But the eventual winner was Sam Burns. And I mentioned the great story for Mike Weir. Well, Sam Burns wins his first career PGA Tour event. And that it's huge for a lot of reasons. He's finished second twice in the last 12 months, and he's moved into the top 50 in the world. But the big thing about winning events in golf is you really get rewarded. Obviously, you get prize money, but Sam Burns, with this victory, he gets a spot in this year's U.S. Open, so he gets to play the major, and he's guaranteed a spot at Augusta next April. That's huge. You get to play two majors. When you get your tour card, you need to get victories. You need to hopefully play well, and then you get invited to these events. But it's not just, I'm on the PGA Tour, I'm going to Augusta National. You need to get wins. And for Sam Burns, he's grinded. Again, he's kind of he played at the Genesis, kind of choked that one away. He had a 3-stroke lead, and he blew it. But this weekend, he gets the win. And it's another great story where he's been a really consistent guy. He's moving up in the FedEx rankings. He's in the top 15 now. And he gets a win, and he gets to play these major tournaments. We'll see him at the U.S. Open next month. I love those stories. The Mike Weir one, Sam Burns, where guys who are not technically brand names, they're not Justin Thomas, they're not Dustin Johnson, Tiger Woods, but they're consistently good golfers, and they get to the pinnacle. They get to go play these major tournaments, and yeah, maybe they won't win them, but you get to go, and you get to put your hat in the ring, give yourself a chance. And it's either way, it's a dream come true, because he gets to play at Augusta National. He's never played there. And with this victory, it assures him he'll be there next April. So for Sam, a great day. Keegan Bradley, he's a consistently good golfer. I mentioned Max Homa, but we got the PGA later in the month. We got some other good tournaments before that. So as we get into the summer months, it definitely, you get the feel of golf. Just with our weather here, I'm sure the people in Ontario are going nuts because it's actually the only province in the world. If you look at the world map, it's the only province in the world that cannot play golf right now because of their lockdown. Which is crazy. But it's I'm sure they'll be going nuts, but it's congratulations to Sam Burns, to Mike Weir. Really good golf weekend, two really good stories, and two kind of underdogs pulling out a victory when they needed it most. So great weekend there. When it comes to terrible stories, the Winnipeg Jets they're in a world of hurt right now. And in this podcast, I will happily tell you when I am right. We'll do that. I do it often because I don't think I'm wrong that often. However, I'm starting more and more to think that I'm wrong about the Winnipeg Jets. They were my team before the season that I thought Toronto would win the division, but I thought Winnipeg would give Toronto the biggest test. And Winnipeg's lost 6 in a row, and they're terrible right now. Connor Hellebuck, last year's Vezina Trophy winner, does not look like the same guy. He's letting in goals that you don't expect him to let in. And I look at him, he doesn't seem as confident. He played Toronto, I believe it was 2 weekends ago, and he just looked like he was unsure. And that's the worst thing you can have as a goaltender. You want to feel the puck. You want to feel confident when it hits your glove. It just always looks like he's like, is that going to be a save? And the indecision, the indecisiveness, it worries me a ton for Connor Hellebuck. So that's one big problem. Two, they're missing two really important forwards, Nick Ehlers and Adam Lowry. Adam Lowry, if you listen to me, you know how much I love Adam Lowry. He anchors the best third line in hockey. It's not close. Lowry, Appleton, Kopp is so efficient. They're so productive. They get points. They wear you down. And I thought that was one big advantage that the Winnipeg Jets would have over the Toronto Maple Leafs. And that's, just you look at Kerfoot, who they have playing third line center right now, against Lowry. It's no contest. It's like Mike Tyson going in the ring against me in his prime. I might as well just flop. Because I'm gonna die. I'm done. So, Kerfoot would be like Jeff Van Gundy holding on to Patrick Ewing, grabbing him by the leg, hoping he doesn't fight. If you ever seen that video, it's really funny. I encourage you to do it. That's a huge lot. He's a huge driver of their team. Even when Knights say you don't have it, he will bring you into the fight because he's got that energy. He's like a human truck. He's not going to maybe not fight, but he'll hit. He gets you invested on the bench. So they miss him. Ehlers is having the best season of his career. I think he's been really, really productive. You look at Ehlers and a guy like Bill Nylander on Toronto. I think they're very similar players. I think Ehlers clearly is a better player this year. You could say the two are similar, which they are, but when you tie them up, you could say, well, Ehlers, Nylander, they're similar players. They make similar money. Ehlers is better to me. So when you're missing a guy, William Nylander's a top 6 forward. He scores goals. He plays with John Tavares. That's going to hurt your team. Also, Scheifele's been a little absent lately. I don't think Blake Wheeler, since getting his concussion, has not been the same player. You don't see that same spunk. You don't see the energy from him. And a guy like Pierre-Luc Dubois has been underwhelming for me lately. I think when he gets into the playoffs, he could be a problem because we saw what he did against Toronto last year. You could make an argument he won that series for Columbus. Who had Columbus beating Toronto? A lot of people didn't, but I did. But it's funny. It's funny to see. So I'll be interested to see what he can bring. But they got a few games left. But in their defense leaves a lot to be desired. I think Pionk's a really good defenseman. He's a 2-3. Then you have Morrissey, who's a 2-3. What Winnipeg has right now, which I think they need to figure out, and this is paramount to teams. This is team building. This is coaching. I'm not saying I'm a coach, but this is just fundamental to me. When you have a group of defensemen and you do not have a number one defenseman, you need to play their ice time accordingly. You do not play a number 2 or number 3 defenseman 25 minutes just because you feel, well, he's close to a number 1. Is he? Is he Hedman? David Savard can play 25 minutes a night. Is he a number 1 defenseman? No, but he's playing with Victor Hedman, who is a number 1. And Savard is a defenseman who can eat minutes. He's not taking offensive chances. That's a difference. Jacob Slavin can play those big minutes. Josh Morrissey and Neil Pionk should not be playing 25 minutes a night. 22, 23 max each. Josh Morrissey is like Morgan Riley to me. You could say Morgan Riley's a better player. Fine. I'm not going to fight you on it. But Morgan Riley is a great number 2 defenseman. Fantastic. He's not a number 1. And they're falling into that trap. And I didn't think Paul Maurice would do it. But just look at Toronto and look down the road and you want to see failure. Big letters, failure, Toronto. Don't do their tricks. That is how I see it, because you do not play a player out of position just because you feel like you have to. Find a better solution. It would have been at the trade deadline, but they got Jordy Ben, and he looks like Jordy Ben, 6'7" defenseman. He's not going to bring you much. He's slow. Their defense is already they got Forbert, and and Tucker Poolman, who are already not the fleetest of foot. So their defense looks slow, goaltending, again, forwards are lethargic. They've lost 6 in a row. And then you have Montreal, who's now only 2 points behind them. And Winnipeg, I'd rather play Edmonton than play Toronto. For sure. I mean, Winnipeg's had trouble with Edmonton this season. They've also had trouble with Toronto, but I think a lot of those games have been closer than people really realize. That could go either way. If I was Winnipeg, I'd probably I'd rather play Edmonton. But, if I'm Toronto, I'd rather play Montreal for sure. I think both Montreal and Winnipeg are better suited for a playoff, the way they're built. But the more and more I watch of the Toronto Maple Leafs, number one, they're an impressive team. I joke with the Toronto Maple Leafs because I like to have fun. And I always say this about Sidney Crosby. I respect Sidney Crosby a ton. And I think he's one of the best players to ever lace up skates. But I'm not his biggest fan. And I don't have to be because there's enough people that'll kiss his ass. So I don't have to do it. But the Toronto Maple Leafs, there's enough people around the world that love them. Watch Sportsnet and TSN. They won't shut up about them. So I'll give them credit. I think Austin Matthews is a phenomenal talent. You're finally seeing the superstar that they drafted number 1 overall. I hadn't seen that yet. Saw it this year. Before this year, he really wasn't because he was a player that played at one end. And I think his give a shit meter getting back and playing the full 200 feet was about at 0.5% out of 100. This year, I'd say it's about a 99.5. So credit to him on that. Playing fantastic. Marner playing great this year. The defense core has been pretty solid. Sandin's look really well coming into the lineup. I think he's played so well that if Bogosian's healthy before the playoffs, I think Dermott comes out and you play Sandin with Bogosian because, well, that's not a big thing to say because Dermott's pylon. So, but Toronto looks really strong. But if I'm Toronto, I want Montreal. I do not want Winnipeg in the first round. If I'm still of the opinion, if Toronto had their way, they'd want Edmonton in the first round. I don't want Edmonton. As a viewer, I don't want to see that. I see people tweeting about how much they want. I do not want that series one bit. Oh my God. To get through that, playoff hockey is supposed to be difficult. It's supposed to be hard. I don't know if they'll throw a check in that series. And I'm not even joking. I'm not trying to be a funny guy here. There's been games between those two teams this year where I don't even think there's been one bit of intensity. A little bit of fervor. Just lethargic. But if you're a Toronto fan, you got to feel good about any team you're playing in. But Winnipeg, they got Ottawa tonight, and I'm going to give Ottawa a ton of credit. They got nothing to play for right now. They're playing for a draft pick, but they've been drafted high forever. But they're playing their players down the stretch of their young kids. Shane Pinto got his first point over the weekend. I wish they played Jacob Bernard-Docker a little bit more on the back end because I think the kid's going to be really good. But they got a young nucleus of players, and these kids want to play. They're not going to play again until October, maybe November of next year. So they're going to give it all they got. And, kudos to Ottawa for playing hard. They go to overtime with Montreal Saturday night, and then we saw Cole Caulfield score his first career NHL goal. So congratulations to the Wisco kid to get the OT winner against Ottawa. But it'll be interesting down the stretch. It's over for Calgary and Vancouver. Vancouver looks like they got hit by the COVID Mack truck. They still have 11 games left. Florida has 3. Florida's season is over next Monday. Vancouver's playing until the following Friday. So that's another interesting thing to watch with the schedule is how did they do that? Will teams start before the Canadian division is only supposed to finish next Friday? Will they start the playoffs before that then for the other teams? I wouldn't be surprised if they do because you can't just wait around for Canada, or if it's a lot of games between Vancouver, Calgary, do they just call them? Again, I don't think that'll happen because you got Sportsnet who are going to want the TV money. So a lot of moving parts here, and Vancouver is basically impossible to watch right now. You watched them the past two games against Toronto; they are just pathetic. So we'll see what they got left. But they got 11 games left. Yeesh. So Winnipeg, get it together, basically. We'll see what they got tonight against the Ottawa Senators. It's an 8:00 start. Toronto, Montreal with a big game tonight, 8:00. It's my little joke from last week. If you didn't tune in, every game between Toronto and Montreal is a big game that they play, I think, 4 times in the next week. So all those big games. Yeah. Good. Another good story. Just a positive Monday show. I love it. Over the weekend, Ryan Miller played his last home start for the Anaheim Ducks. I believe it was last Thursday. He came out and announced that this was going to be his last NHL season. Ryan Miller's had a great career. Playing in Buffalo for a long time, going to multiple conference finals with the Buffalo Sabres, fighting Ray Emery. I think of that in the 2007 playoffs. That was iconic. Obviously, he was the goaltender led in Sidney Crosby's golden goal, but he played a fantastic Olympics. He's won a silver medal at the Olympic Games, and he's actually he's got the most wins by any American born U.S. goaltender. So great career for him playing in Buffalo. Got traded to St. Louis, didn't work out when they traded him there at the deadline. Since coming to Anaheim, he's been a really solid backup, really good mentor to John Gibson. He's got a wife that's a movie star. So he's going to call it a career after the end of the season. Play Saturday night against LA. They get the win. What I'd like to see is after the game, the whole LA Kings team lines up and shakes his hand. We see some really good moments. Him and Anze Kopitar probably spent 45 seconds to a minute talking to each other. It was just mutual respect, and he deserves this. Ryan Miller's been a backup. He's kind of been a journeyman now. But when he was in his prime, he was one of the best goaltenders in the world. I think of my youth and watching 2006, the Buffalo Sabres play the Carolina Hurricanes in the conference final. One win away from going to a Stanley Cup final against the Edmonton Oilers. Then you go the next year, they lose in 5 to Ottawa. But Ryan Miller is really solid in that series. He went up against some really good players in Daniel Alfredsson, Chris Phillips, Wade Redden, some Martin Havlat who had a great run. So he ran into a couple buzzsaw teams, but he's a goalie that you'll never forget. I think he's a fantastic guy. I think he's always had a really good personality too with the media. Obviously, he's a goaltender, so he's going to be a different cat. If you ever met a goaltender, they're just different people. But I think it was special. I like the symbolism and the mutual respect that a huge rival, LA and Anaheim, they're not friends. They've had playoff series that were wars. But you see the likes of Anze Kopitar, Dustin Brown, a fellow American, even Drew Doughty, who was on that 2010 Olympic team. They give a hug. Every player kind of shows their respect to a legend leaving the game. And to Ryan Miller, all the best to you. I think I could really see him becoming a goaltending coach. Just the way he's kind of been a mentor to John Gibson. I think this shows that, he can move into that role. Maybe he does it in Anaheim because, you mentioned his wife's a movie star and he has a few children. So, but just working with goaltenders and what he's done, I think nurturing them and giving them all the tools to be successful, that would be a great role for him in the future. Another interesting one for me is the Central Division and the battle at the bottom. Two different battles in this division really for me, but I look at the battle at the bottom of the division, and it's between Dallas and Nashville. They met Saturday night. Nashville gets a 1-0 win in overtime, crushing loss for Dallas because they needed that win in regulation. They would have tied Nashville in the standings and actually overtaken them because they have games in hand. But a huge win for Nashville. It was their last meeting of the season. So they both play tonight, but they go in now. Dallas has 5 games left. Nashville has 4 games left. And, Nashville has 58 points, Dallas has 55. So Nashville controls his destiny. If they win out, then they're going to make the playoffs. They'll get that 4 seed, likely play Carolina in the first round of the playoffs. But Dallas has got to hope for some luck, but they have the tougher schedule for sure. You got Predators have 4 games left. Monday, they play Columbus. Columbus has been one of the worst teams in the NHL over the last month and a half. They play Columbus again Wednesday. They got Carolina Saturday and then Carolina Monday. So they do have 2 tough matchups. Carolina will be motivated to win those games to try to clinch their place in the top spot at the Central Division. So they won't be addressing a B squad, but the 2 Columbus games, those are must wins. They should be wins because Columbus, like I said, they're checked out. John Tortorella is not going to be their head coach next year. They're going to be making some off-season moves, trying to re-sign Seth Jones, but their roster is in need of an overhaul. So they're check please. So 2 tough last couple games, but the first 2, those should be 4 points. Dallas, they got 5 games left, trailing by 3. So you need some help and you need some wins. They got Florida tonight. Then they got Tampa Wednesday, Tampa Friday. Then they finish Sunday, Monday against Chicago. Chicago games, yeah, those should be. Chicago's out of it now. They're too far behind. So those are kind of like Columbus, but Chicago they'll play harder. You got Patrick Kane. You got some guys that are just more Duncan Keith. Those guys aren't mail it in type guys. I think you look at the Columbus roster, they've been checked out for a while. They just have a losing mentality. Chicago still has that aura about them, and Patrick Kane's not going to be about to take a dive for a Dallas team that's a division rival. You don't like them, and you can play spoiler and screw them out of a playoff spot. You revel in that. You want somebody to be golfing when you're golfing. So to do that to Dallas, I think they'll give them their best shot. We got Florida tonight, and then Tampa. Tampa and Florida are going to be fighting it out because they both need to win. Florida's got 3 games left in their season. They play Dallas tonight, and then they got Tampa twice. And Tampa's got 4 games left. So Tampa has got Dallas twice and then Florida twice on their schedule. And it's going to be a dogfight for these teams because they're tied in points. Tampa's got 1 game in hand, but they could still both potentially finish first, but Carolina does control its destiny. They have 5 games remaining. But this Central Division is going to be so interesting because the teams that finish 2-3 are going to play each other, obviously, in the first round. And Tampa, Florida would be a great series because Florida has been playing some really good hockey lately. Sam Bennett, since being traded to Florida, he's got 2 game-winning goals. He's got 4 goals, period. He looks great. We see Nikita Gusev starting to light the lamp for them. Anthony Duclair has found his game late in the season. Bobrovsky's playing pretty well. Then you have Tampa. Stamkos is on the injured reserve. They're still without Nikita Kucherov. He should be ready come playoff time, but how does he look coming back? I still think Tampa's the favorite to win that series, but you can never underestimate Florida. People have been underestimating them all year, and do it at your own peril. Because you got Alexander Barkov, who is one of the least talked about stars in the NHL, but the dude's a flat out stud. He's a power forward with hands like Eric Lindros. I think that's his closest player comparison to me is Eric Lindros. Yes, he's not the physical specimen that Lindros was, but the way he moves, his size and his speed at that height and that girth, the guy can just mow you over. So you got that defense. Obviously, losing Aaron Ekblad is such a tough blow, playing so fantastic this year. But Montour's looked good since stepping in. But it'll be interesting to see Dallas, Nashville, Tampa, Florida down the stretch. Obviously, Tampa and Dallas and Nashville is just make the playoffs. You squeak into that last spot, and Tampa and Florida will be fighting over position, potentially home ice advantage in that first round matchup if they do meet, if they do finish 2-3. So Central Division, interesting. I don't think anybody thought this division would be interesting. Then you got, out west, you got Vegas, Colorado's found their stretch. They got 2 or 3 more games against San Jose this week because of they had their COVID shutdown. So they got a lot of games against San Jose to make up points. And but all these teams are winding down. By next Monday, other than the Canadian division, every division will be done. So like I said, it'll be interesting to see what the NHL does when it comes to scheduling. I'm sure that the Sportsnet will want to have, say, Toronto, Montreal on a Thursday, and then Winnipeg against Edmonton on a Friday. Kind of scatter those games so you don't have both of Canada. Then you have NBC, where I'm sure they'll love to have Tampa, Florida. I think would be a key matchup. Oddly enough, two smaller markets, but you got defending Stanley Cup champions, obviously there. And then I think the East Division is where you make your money. You got your Boston, Washington would be killer for them. Even the Islanders, Pittsburgh, again, that's a big sell in the United States. So we're winding down. We'll keep track of all the division and obviously talk about it here and to the point. But it's getting interesting here down the stretch with only a few games left. And I'm excited for the 10 because it's been a slog for most, especially the Canadian division, because it's just been locked up for so long, it seems like. Major League Baseball. I still think they've had a really positive start to the year. They got into a bit of a hiccup last week where Madison Bumgarner threw a no-hitter. But it was a 7-inning no-hitter where, Major League Baseball has implemented a new rule where if there's a game that's rained out and you want to have a doubleheader to make up for it, it's 7 innings, which I have no problem with. I think it's smart. Having 2 9-inning games back-to-back is, first of all, it's a slog on the players because they play 162 to begin with. And then it's a slog on viewership because most fans are not watching 2 9-inning games back-to-back. They just aren't. I mean, you look at viewership, people are busy. They're not sitting, especially when these games can be 4 hours long. The Blue Jays played the Rays a couple weeks ago and there was nothing on, so I threw it on. It was 3 hours and 40 minutes of 1-0 baseball. That's not entertaining. I sat through it because nothing else is on, and there's that stupid Zurich golf tournament where it was pairs, and I hate anything like that. I hate the Ryder Cup. I hate anything team-oriented when it comes to golf. That's an individual sport for me. But I got through it, I guess, but it was not riveting. And 1-0, almost 4 hours. So that's fine, but they didn't give Madison Bumgarner a no-hitter. Well, he should have been given a no-hitter because if you only have 7 innings to play and you don't give up a hit, how is that not a no-hitter? It wasn't like Bumgarner said, well, no, we're only played 7 today. Check, please. Major League Baseball said you're playing 7 innings. You cannot play 9. So he could have tried to throw 2 more innings of no-hit ball, but Major League Baseball said it's not a no-hitter. Well, why pitch? You pitch a no-hitter 7 innings. It doesn't incentivize you to do it because maybe you can put up a separate argument saying, well, it was a 7-inning no-hitter. But if I'm Madison Bumgarner, he doesn't care. He's the 3-time World Series champion. He's a stud. He's one of the best postseason pitchers in the history of the game. But why are you penalizing pitchers for getting a no-hitter, but saying, well, no, that one doesn't count. It's only 7 innings. Well, you can't have your cake and eat it too. And I think baseball's trying to do that. And fans and people like me are just like, well, how's that not a no-hitter? You're not letting him pitch longer. Make the games 9 innings. Because there's no sport where numbers and history and just trajectory is more important than baseball. Playing 162, batting average, and the Mendoza line, and just amount of home runs in a season. Numbers are referenced more in baseball than any other sport, and it's not even close. You track when Tom Brady passes Drew Brees for most passing yards, but you don't know the number. You think of the home run chase with Sosa and McGuire and Barry Bonds, and when they're all sticking needles in their ass. Everybody knows that chase. Everybody knows Roger Maris hit 62, but then you got Barry who hit 70. So, but a no-hitter, it's been watered down for sure. That could be bad hitting, just bad plate approach. But a no-hitter is a no-hitter. You put your name in history, and I think that was a bad sign for baseball. But in general, I think they've had a positive start to the season. We saw the Dodgers get off to a wicked hot start. They look like they were going to be gangbusters, the best team in baseball. Then we see, great personality, Nick Castellanos in the first week. He he gets tossed from a game from being just a really fun player to watch, which was stupid again from baseball. But he's a guy I love to watch. Also, Nick Castellanos, Cincinnati Reds yesterday, wins 13-12 over the Cubs, goes slash line 5 or 6, scores 4 runs, 4 RBI, 2 homers, but in a walk-off single. But just thought I'd throw that in there. But we've seen some really fun stuff. The divisions, a lot of teams are just poor. I'll mention the Atlanta Braves coming up, but that whole NL East I thought would be really competitive with the Phillies and the Mets and Braves. It's been a disaster. But the Dodgers look like they're just going to run through the league. But it's nice to see over the last week or so that it's not so. And the most compelling division and the most division that's the most when it comes to close in the standings and how tight it is the NL West. And yeah, it's May 3rd today, and that could change in a month. But the NL West is normally a division where at this point, and we're a month, it's over. Dodgers have like a 6-game lead. By the time it's June, it's 12, and you're like, okay, well, it's over. Diamondbacks have faded. The Padres are there, but they come on late. Then you have the Giants who are rebuilding. So they're terrible. And the Rockies still are pretty bad. But you look at this division. I think it's interesting. You got the Giants right now are leading the division at 17-11. They're just playing really consistent baseball. Padres took 2 or 3 from them this weekend. But you got Kevin Gausman, who's turning around his career, the former Baltimore Orioles pitcher. He's got a 2.04 ERA after 5 starts. The guy's pitching fantastic. Taylor Webb has been really good for them. Johnny Cueto. We see Evan Longoria turning his career around. They don't have many brand names, but they're just playing really good baseball, all contributing. Good pitching, and then clutch hitting when they need it. Second place is the Dodgers, but they're 17-12. They were 16-4 at one point, but they get swept. They lose 3 or 4 to the Padres, including, blowing a 7-1 lead in the 7th inning. So you see that happen. And then they get swept by Cincinnati last week, Tuesday to Thursday. And then this weekend, they dropped 2 or 3 to Milwaukee. They crushed them yesterday 16-4, but they lose 2 or 3 to Milwaukee on the road. And, they still are the best team in baseball, but it's good to see competitive. We see a lot of standings where it's just tough to watch late in the year. I like seeing this. You see all the teams combined together. Then you got the Padres. They're 16-13. So only a game behind the Dodgers. You want to see that. You want to see Tatis Jr. You want to see Eric Hosmer and Machado be close to the Dodgers all season. So when they play, the games are so meaningful. And the Diamondbacks, they're 15-13. They're right there too. They're not the caliber of the top 3. I think the Giants have been a big surprise, just the way they're playing. Diamondbacks, I still think are a level behind them, but I love it. Mookie Betts has had a slower start to his season. We saw a huge day yesterday. Dodgers went 16-4. They hit 2 grand slams in the same game, which is incredible. That's what they can do when they really get firing. And maybe they'll get some target practice this week because they got the Chicago Cubs, who are just a mess right now when it comes to their pitching staff. But who would have thought the NL West, the most competitive division in baseball? Certainly not me. And I think it's so interesting because you got the NL East that's been really full of really bad teams. The Mets, the Phillies, Atlanta, huge disappointment. The Marlins have not been good. So, and you look at the AL East, which is always talked about because the Blue Jays are here and the Yankees. Yankees sweep the Tigers, but way to go. Who doesn't sweep the Tigers? They stink. You got the Orioles who kick around still, but they're not going to be there. Red Sox continue to play some pretty good baseball. The Rays they're just an okay team, which is what they're going to be. Their hitters have dried up. They lose some of their pitching depth, losing Charlie Morton and losing Blake Snell to trades. And then you got the Blue Jays, who had a big weekend. Obviously, they sweep the Atlanta Braves, who were in the National League Championship game last year. And the Braves dropped to 12-16. I'll touch on them in a minute. But kudos to the Blue Jays. They've gone through a ton of injuries this year with key guys on the IL. Nate Pearson still working his way back. saw Jordan Romano return over the weekend, one of their better bullpen options. But, yesterday, Alejandro Kirk, who was really starting to play well for them at the catcher position, gets put on the IL. Hyunjin Ryu is going to miss his next start. Ross Stripling got activated. But every time they seem to get a player back, two get hurt. And also George Springer, who's only played Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, had to leave yesterday's game. He hasn't been in center field yet. He's playing designated hitter. He's their DH, and he had to leave the game yesterday. No news if he'll play tonight. They're in Oakland. They're heading out west. They got 3 against Oakland, then 3 against the Houston Astros next weekend. So they need Springer to be healthy. They need him to get him into center field, but clearly something's still bothering him because he had to leave the game. Funny thing for the Blue Jays is they're starting to come on, and their catcher position brings them nothing. Danny Jansen hits below 100. Yesterday, he had gone 0 for his last 35. He went 2 for 3 yesterday with a walk with an RBI, but he's been a non-factor. Kirk hit 2 home runs Saturday nights. Just as he starts to get going, he gets put on the injured list. So this team does have some promise. You look at their pitching depth, it still leaves something to be desired. And I think the 2 things holding this team back from being a real contender is pitching depth and defense. Bo Bichette at shortstop is a liability right now. 2 plays yesterday, I think both of them should have been ruled as errors, and they both weren't, which I don't understand how they weren't. Early in the 3rd inning, Bo Bichette gets the ball, just throws it way too high for Vladdy. He can't make the play on it. A guy's safe. Austin Riley was running hard, but it wasn't an infield single. It wasn't a play where it was bang, bang. You should have had the guy out, and they ruled it a single, which I guess they want to do Bo Bichette some favors. And then later he throws one in the ground that was behind, and it was poor throw. Vladdy had to stretch, can't get it in his glove. And when Vladdy Guerrero Jr. is playing better defense than Bo Bichette, or Kevin Biggio for that matter, a third, you know that there's a problem. Vladdy's been solid at first base. I think he's had to make a lot of tough plays. He's had to stretch. And obviously his bat's been working. He's playing fantastic, batting over 350, looking like the guy that they said was going to be one of the best hitting prospects in the history of baseball. But they got the most infield errors in the American League, and Bo Bichette's a key problem with that. But it's a developmental year, but it's also win now year because the Yankees aren't unbeatable. The Red Sox aren't either. I think they will fall off before the season ends. The Rays are just okay. The Rays are like every team in this division. They're just okay. This is a division where any team could win it because nobody is dominant over the rest. But you look at the Blue Jays bats, it's hard to argue that they don't have the best bats in the division. You got Vladdy, you got Bichette, Rando Grichuk's off to a great start. If Springer's healthy, of course, the guy's a 300 hitter in his career. Even Alejandro Kirk, if Teoscar Hernandez, he's coming back from COVID, if he can find his game. So it's there for the taking, but defense and for Bo Bichette this year, figure it out because there's some really good shortstops on the market. You got the likes of Javi Baez from the Cubs. You got Trevor Story, Francisco Lindor. Maybe the Mets re-sign him, but we'll see. But there's some guys available that if the Blue Jays say, hey, we want to go win a World Series, maybe you splash some money and say, we're going to move Bo Bichette to second base. We'll sign Javi Baez. He's a Gold Glover at short, and we shore up this defense. Our pitching staff's decent, but we have really good defense to counteract that, and we'll test our luck here. So work on those couple things, and I think the Blue Jays could be a real contender here, especially in the American League, which does not have a team that's above the rest, in my opinion. You look at the Minnesota Twins, they're 10-16. Terrible start. So this American League can be had for sure. Kansas City Royals are first. That's tells you all you need to know. But the Atlanta Jays sweep Atlanta over the weekend, beat them 7-2 yesterday. They walked them off Saturday night 6-5. And they win Friday night, I believe 4-0 or 4-1. But there's so many problems with Atlanta. Look like they're 12-16, and lucky their division's just been as awful, so they're still right in. I think they're 2 games out of first place. But Ian Anderson, this pitching prospect that looked he was going to be the next great pitcher for Atlanta, He's got a over 3-year ERA right now. He can't go past 4 in the third innings. He's struggling. Charlie Morton, they signed him out of Tampa Bay. He's got a 5.29 ERA. He's getting hit all over the field. Drew Smiley's got an 8.05 ERA. These are all starting pitchers for this team. They've got to hope Mike Soroka can return, the Canadian pitcher who was top 3 in the Cy Young voting a year and a half ago, but then he tore his ACL. So how will he look coming back? But the pitching is terrible for Atlanta, and the bats aren't that much better. Freddie Freeman batting .216, Marcell Ozuna batting .204, Ozzie Albies .229, Dansby Swanson .202. Those slash lines are just horrid, and you can't win with that. Freddie Freeman won the MVP last year. He still can hit home runs, but he's a guy that can hit for average. He hit over 300 last year. Ozuna, he's not normally a huge average guy, but he's only hitting 250, high 240s. 204 is not going to cut it. Ozzie Albies, an everyday second baseman, you cannot bat 229. And you see them put in William Contreras, their catching prospect. He was one of the best hitters yesterday. So you got to think about playing him more often. Travis d'Arnaud got sat yesterday. His bat's just as cold. He's batting close to 200. So do I think they can turn it around? Yes, but it's not like they're in an easy division. I mentioned, the Mets have really improved. The Phillies feel like they're right in it. The Marlins are hanging around. The Washington Nationals have had their pitching problems. So I think this will be an intriguing division all year because I don't like the American League East. I don't know if there's going to be a dominant team. It should be Atlanta, but will it be? Ronald Acuna is the only guy that's a consistent hitter for them right now, and he looks frustrated because when he's not hitting, when he's not driving in runs, when he's not hitting home runs, they aren't scoring any runs, and they give up a lot of runs in bunches. So Jay's impressive. Sweep the Atlanta Braves over the weekend. You take that for sure, and that you head out west and see what you can do against the Oakland Athletics, who have had a really solid turnaround after starting the season 0-7. So good effort there. The NBA. This year it's an interesting development because this season in the NBA, they're doing something a little different. After the regular season's over, they're going to be having a play-in tournament. And I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but it's got more amplified last night because of LeBron James giving his 2 cents on it. So what happens is the 7th to 10 seeds technically make the playoffs. So what happens in this scenario, 7th seed plays the 8th seed. The winner of that game will be the 7th seed heading into the playoffs. They will play the number 2 team in the conference. So the 8th seed waits. Then the 9th seed plays the 10th seed. The winner of that will play the loser of 7-8. And then the winner of that game will be the 8th seed. I know it sounds confusing right now, but I'll put it in more context. So right now, if the season ended, the Los Angeles Lakers would play the Memphis Grizzlies in a 1-game playoff. The winner of that would be the 7th seed. Right now it's the Lakers, but if the Lakers lost, they would have to play the 9-10 in the West, which is the Spurs and I forget the other team right now. They're both not very good. But right now to see who would make the playoffs. And so potentially the Los Angeles Lakers with LeBron James and Anthony Davis, the defending NBA champions, would miss the playoffs technically based on this play-in tournament. And LeBron James been out for a while since coming back. He missed a chance to win the game Friday night on a 3. And last night he had a mixed bag game, but they lose to the Raptors, who are just basically mailing in this season. OG Anunoby, Fred VanVleet did not play. They lose to the Raptors on home court on a back-to-back. So that even worse. So tough loss, but LeBron gets asked about the play-in tournament after the game because with the loss, they are now tied with the Portland Trailblazers and the Dallas Mavericks for 5th in the West. But because of head-to-head meetings, Dallas is 5th, Portland is 6th. So the Lakers are in the 7th spot in the West right now. And LeBron's quote is, "Whoever came up with this play-in shit should be fired." And I don't love the play-in either because what's the point of regular season? You get the 7th, 8th seed, you should get it. But I get why they're doing it. It's revenue. TNT, ESPN, they want that extra game, that one game playoff. It's like the wild card game in baseball, which is always exciting. And it'll probably be an interesting game, and I'll definitely watch it. But I get his sentiment. But boo-hoo. Boo-hoo, LeBron. Like LeBron, the guy who doesn't get more love than LeBron James. Now he's complaining about this playing tournament. He has an injury. He's out for a while. Anthony Davis is out for a while. Well, you've come back from your injury, LeBron. You played 2 games. You played Sacramento and the Raptors. How about beat Sacramento and the Raptors and not bitch and complain about the play-in tournament? Why don't beat the Sacramento? Before Friday night, they lost by 53 points to the Utah Jazz. And they beat the King? They go into the King's house and beat him? How about win a game? Not bitch and flap your gums. But maybe you won't be in the playing tournament. Maybe you will be. Injuries happen. Shit happens in life and in sports. And it's funny because you have the Lakers in the West who would be in the play-in tournament currently. And who would be in the play-in tournament in the Eastern Conference? The Boston Celtics. The 2 most storied franchises in the history of the NBA. Boston Celtics, their season can be defined by this weekend. Friday night, they're down by as many as 30 points to the San Antonio Spurs, but they rally and come back and win. Jason Tatum dropped 60 points, which ties a Celtic record with one Larry Joe Bird, who, if you don't know, he's a pretty good player. Pretty high esteem. So they come back and win. Then they play Portland last night on their home floor. They lose. That's their season. They try to get some momentum, and it just gets killed. They lose to Portland last night. They should win that game at home. Portland's coming from a different time zone. Win, but you lose that one. So they would be in the 7th spot right now. They would play Charlotte for the 7th spot if the season ended today. They're close with the Miami Heat and with the Atlanta Hawks, but they could still rise to as far as 5th or 4th. But this is just the Boston. I like seeing these 2 elitist teams be put in this position. Do I love the play-in tournament? No, but I like to see big teams like this squirm a little bit. You got LeBron who's bitching and complaining, and then you got the Celtics who always have an excuse for losing because that's just what they do. Danny Ainge loves to, well, we didn't have this player. Well, how about trade for somebody, Danny Ainge? You've only been the GM for almost 20 years. You've only won 1 title in that time. So, but it's interesting. Again, the play-in tournament's not my favorite thing, but it's certainly an interesting concept. And I'll be interested to see how it plays out. We've never seen it happen before. We saw sort of happen in the bubble, but this is different. And I'm sure if a 7 seed goes down, if they lose to the 8 seed and then somehow miraculously, say the Celtics lose to Charlotte, okay, Charlotte's the 7th seed, then the Washington Wizards beat the Pacers, and then the Wizards with Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal, who've been playing fantastic over the past month, beat the Celtics. I'm sure we'll hear complaining, including from ESPN, because they would rather put Boston on TV than the Washington Wizards. But it would be compelling. For sure it would be compelling. And I think we see a lot of belly aching. We'd hear a lot of complaints. But I wouldn't complain about it, because if it's in it, if these playing games are just, if they're garbage and a team wins by 30, well, then you don't need to see it. But all you can hope for right now is like a wild card game in baseball. And those are some of the best games of the season, bar none. So we'll see what it brings, but I'm intrigued to see what this play-in tournament does. And now I'm kind of actively rooting to see LeBron James in this play-in tournament, because if he had to play another game, God forbid, he's only sit out the last, 20, 25. So try to win a game before you start bitching about a play-in tournament, LeBron, but never mind. But that's going to do it for today. Monday morning, great show. Planning it this week, hopefully to do a show with a new guest that a friend of mine, but I've never had him on. We're going to be ranking our top 10 most intriguing personalities in sports. And it's going to be different criteria. For me, I know I'm going to base it a lot about just when it comes to interviewing and just personality. And so don't expect to see Sidney Crosby on my list. But just, it can be his criteria could be different than mine, but I think that would be that's going to be a lot of fun. Me and Seamus will be back tomorrow night to to cover some Breaking Bad episodes 3 and 4 of season 1. 2 really good episodes, especially episode 3 is really a turning point where we see Walter White go down the dark road that he goes down throughout the entire series. And then obviously some other I'll be on with Craig Eagles tonight on FDS around 7:30. We'll be talking NHL and all that goes into that. We'll also be talking about who Seattle should be targeting as their next head coach as they enter the league officially on Friday. So lots happening into the point. Do you guys have any thoughts, comment on the video? Reach out to me directly. I love hearing from you all. Hoping to have some interviews like the one I did with Doug McLean down the line. Still working on getting guests, but we'll see what happens. But for everybody, thank you so much for listening, for the support. Have a great week, and we'll talk soon.